The first week after we moved into the picturesque lakeside HOA neighborhood of Clearwater Shores felt like a dream. The houses were immaculate, the lawns manicured like something out of a luxury magazine, and the shimmering blue of the lake was just steps from our backyard. For me, the lake wasn't just scenery, it was my life. I grew up fishing, sailing, and restoring boats. The pride of my collection was a 24-foot center console fishing boat I'd spent years refurbishing, named Liberty Belle. She wasn't just a boat, she was my heart on the water. And when I parked her in my driveway one sunny Saturday morning, I didn't think it would cause any trouble. But that's when I first met her, the HOA's self-appointed enforcer. A middle-aged woman with a tight bob of over-bleached hair, oversized sunglasses, and an expression that looked permanently disapproving, she strutted toward me like she owned the entire street. "You can't park that here," she barked without even introducing herself. HOA regulations. No boats in driveways. I told her politely that I'd just brought it back from maintenance and was planning to take it out the next day. But she wasn't having it. "Rules are rules," she said, snapping a photo on her phone before storming off. I shrugged it off. Little did I know this was only the first move in what would become a full-blown war. By Monday morning, I found a bright orange violation notice taped to my front door, a $250 fine for unauthorized parking of a marine vessel. I was annoyed, but still tried to be civil. I called the HOA office, explained the situation, and was told to discuss it with the neighborhood compliance chair. And guess who that turned out to be? None other than the sunglasses-wearing neighbor from Saturday. I asked if she'd reconsider, but she just smirked and said, "If you can't follow the rules, maybe this neighborhood isn't for you." Her smugness got under my skin, but I decided to take the high road. I moved the boat to my friend's dock 2 streets over. Problem solved, or so I thought. A week later, I needed to bring the boat home again for a minor repair. It was late evening, the sun setting in gold over the water, and I figured I'd park it overnight and take it out the next morning. But the moment my truck pulled into the driveway, I saw her curtains twitch. I could feel her eyes burning into me. 10 minutes later, I heard shouting from across the street. "That boat is illegal here! I'm calling 911!" At first, I laughed. Surely she wouldn't actually involve the police over a boat, right? But then I heard her voice, shrill, urgent, on the phone, reporting a hazardous marine vessel parked in a residential zone and possible environmental violations. I thought it was absurd, until I heard the distant wail of sirens. Within minutes, a police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. 2 officers stepped out, clearly confused when they saw the emergency. I calmly explained that the boat was registered, insured, and perfectly safe. The officers seemed satisfied, but Karen wasn't done. "If the local police won't do anything, I'll get the Coast Guard involved," she shouted, her voice echoing across the street like she'd just declared war. The cops chuckled, said there was nothing illegal happening, and left. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, as I sipped coffee on my porch, I heard the unmistakable rumble of an engine, but not a car, a boat engine. My jaw dropped as I looked toward the lake and saw a U.S. Coast Guard patrol vessel approaching the neighborhood dock. 2 uniformed officers stepped off, walking briskly toward my property. My phone buzzed. A text from my friend. "Dude, why is the Coast Guard here?" My stomach tightened. The officers introduced themselves, explaining they'd received a report of a potentially stolen boat being hidden in a residential driveway. My pulse raced. This wasn't just petty HOA drama anymore. This was a federal investigation. I invited them to inspect Liberty Belle. They checked the hull number, ran the registration, and confirmed everything was perfectly legal. I expected them to leave, but they didn't. Instead, they looked over at Karen's house. Apparently, they'd also received a separate report that someone was operating an unauthorized maritime security patrol from a private residence, that someone was Karen. She'd called them not once, but 3 times, using exaggerated and false claims to escalate the situation. And here's the twist. Filing false reports to federal authorities? That's a serious offense. As the Coast Guard questioned her on her lawn, neighbors began to gather, whispering. Karen tried to play the victim, claiming she was just looking out for the community. But the officers weren't buying it. I heard one of them say, "Ma'am, you understand this could result in charges, correct?" Her face drained of color. She stammered something about misunderstandings and confusion before retreating inside. The officers turned back to me, apologized for the inconvenience, and even complimented the boat. Before they left, one of them said, "Between you and me, we've had our fair share of calls from people like her." That day, something shifted in the neighborhood. People who had avoided me before started waving, stopping to chat, and even offering to help me launch Liberty Bell. Word spread quickly about how Karen had humiliated herself in front of the entire block, and the Coast Guard. She kept a low profile for weeks afterward, but I'd catch her peeking out from behind her blinds whenever I backed my truck up to hitch the boat. Eventually, the HOA board itself called me in for a meeting. I expected more trouble, but instead they wanted to resolve tensions and offered to grant me a special exception for short-term boat parking. I accepted, not because I needed their approval, but because it was the perfect way to end the feud on my terms. As I walked out of that meeting, I saw Karen in the hallway. She looked away, lips pressed tight. No more smug smirk, no more threats. I'd won, not by yelling, not by breaking rules, but by letting her own over-the-top behavior sink her. Now every time I take Liberty Bell out on the lake, I pass the spot near Karen's backyard where the Coast Guard first appeared. And I can help but smile, because nothing beats the day an HOA Karen called 911 over a boat and ended up being the one in trouble with the feds.